You're listening to The South Stands, a Buckeye football podcast by Ohio State fans for Ohio State fans, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, and SoundCloud. Hey, Paige, what stood out to you in that performance yesterday from the Buckeyes? Anything in particular?
Corcoran's Corner pretty much summed it up. Nothing. There was nothing about that game. I mean, the only thing that stood out to me about that game is that it just reminded me that I'm just a jaded Ohio State fan, because in years past, like last year, had that game been close, we'd have just been complaining because why is this game even close? But yesterday I just found myself complaining, like, why am I even watching this game? And why is this team in the Big Ten? And there's just, it's kind of, it's just disappointing coming after a bye and it's 21-0, after 3 possessions. You're like, this isn't even a fun game to watch. And so, truth be told, Mikey and I didn't even watch it. We, at that point, flipped over.
I watched it on tape till after the Bama LSU game and just kind of, I was reading like a magazine.
I didn't even do that. I mean, minor things. I don't know. Did they look that sharp? I mean, Fields didn't look that sharp. It's hard to say. I mean, they put up 73 points. The guys didn't even play in the second half, but looked like he was, a little missing some receivers here and there, but all in all, I mean, it's just a game. We move on from it to even a more embarrassing matchup next week until finally end the season with some competition.
I mean, what's staggering about this is that this Maryland team that we just beat by 60 beat Rutgers 48-7. Mr. Sloan, what did you see from yesterday?
So what I thought the good thing is that I saw is that this team is coming out playing every team with the same intensity. I didn't think, to Paige's point, I didn't think it was flawless, but they did execute well on both sides of the ball. And when you see that kind of, for lack of a better way of putting it, like team blindness, like they don't care who the other team is across there, they're just going to hit them with as much punch as they can and take it to them, whether it's the first team or the second team. I like that because, I mean, even if they did have the second and third teams in there, they still almost doubled up the score from the first half. So, again, I think Day has a good focus on this team. And when you start at games like this, while they're not enjoyable for the fan, is instructive because the mindset of these guys are just to go out and kill whoever's out in front of them. Yeah.
No, I did like that. And I like the way you describe that kind of like nameless, faceless opponent, right? You don't think about who your opponent is. You just go out and execute. You play your game. And that's exactly what they did. They just continued to, to do what they've been doing all year long and didn't pay any mind to the fact that it was Maryland. What else did you see from yesterday?
I like Tough Borland had a solid game. And it's always good to see when his game has been lifted up a little bit. I think him having a little bit more confidence out there, especially the first half of the season last year, he did really poorly, and he's been playing inspired ball, and it's good. And I think it's been because we've had that rotation, we've had other guys coming in there, Harrison especially, that have made him probably up his game. Because if he wasn't going to do it, then he wouldn't be up there playing. But he has been, and he's been delivered. I think he was the leading tackler yesterday. So, hats off to him.
Yeah, a good call on that. Yeah, he had a nice – it was either a 3rd and 1 or I think it was a 3rd and 1 stop on Anthony McFarland, right in the hole on 3rd and short. McFarland was the guy who tore us up last year in College Park, and that play stood out to me. He also had a nice sack.
Play definitely stood out.
Yeah, that was nice. What I'm going to remember most from the game, there's 3 things that were what I remember the most from this game. The first is, Ohio State already up 14-0. They execute that perfect onside kick that Olave caught along the sidelines. They were up 14-0 at that point, and then they score right away. And then after that, the next thing that I'll take away from that was that and I already mentioned it, up 42-0 with 26 seconds to play. Maryland's punting, and Ryan Day calls for the punt block, and Seven Banks barely misses that. I thought that was just ruthless. attacking by day. Certainly wanted to finish that game. He wanted to, like, he could go for the kill shot right out of the gates. But the fact that
also means we got a really good special teams.
Hell yeah.
On both sides.
Oh yeah. No, I agree with you, Mike. I mean, that kick looked. You couldn't have thrown a better pass to Olave up the sidelines than what Javier did with his foot. It was quite a play. But the fact that they did it in the situations that they did it, right? It was mid first quarter. You're already up 2 scores, and it's evident that Maryland is going to have no hope of stopping you. And yet you kick it anyway. You pull the onside kick anyway, and then with 26 seconds to go, you're up 42-0, and you've got the punt block on. I just think that's freaking ruthless. The other thing was after the game, and I had mentioned this over text to you guys. I really thought it was cool. The video in the post game that was circulating on Twitter of the Ohio State players mobbing Maryland linebacker Keandre Jones, as you guys remember.
Oh,
Jones,
dude, it was like he said, "Go out and win the Natty."
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. I mean, Keandre Jones spent 3 years with the program, and basically, I think it was Pete Warner who beat him out. He transfers to Maryland because he wants to play. I think he had even said in one of the pregame interviews that it was nothing personal. He just wanted to play. And I just thought it was cool to see the players mob him. I mean, there was a huge group of Ohio State players there, and they spent a good long time with him, taking pictures. And, they talk about it being a brotherhood, and I guess if you're a cynical type, you can roll your eyes. But, I mean, if you look at that situation and don't come away believing that it really is a brotherhood, these guys really care about each other, there's something wrong with you. I thought it was really cool. So those are my 3 takeaways from the game.
I agree.
Yeah. So what is the logic of running that onside kick against Maryland?
Right.
I mean, because in the 40 years I've been watching football, I've never seen that, and it was the most flawlessly executed onside ever.
Yeah.
But you pull it. I mean, you might need that against Penn State or Michigan. I don't understand why he did it in that game.
Well, yeah. So I tend to think it's calculated, and I think he might be trying to set up another play on special teams by showing that one. Joel Klatt had pointed out during the telecast that Maryland was cheating a guy over on the kickoffs, and they were not covering that side of the field. I don't know if there's some advantage to that. Maybe in an onside kick situation where if Ohio State ever has to use one, they make the team cover the entire field. Maybe they spread them out. They don't let the opposition, bunch up in the middle of the field, as they often do with these onside kicks to field it. I don't know. To me, I'm sure it's calculated. It has to be setting some other play up down the line, would be my guess, Paige. Matt, do you have any thoughts on that play?
You know what? I agree. Kind of. This is going to sound chicken shit, but I kind of agree. I mean, there's part of me is like Maryland showed it, so they said, "Hey, we've been practicing it. Let's see if we can execute it in real time." But there's also the point of like, we should probably back pocket this until we really need it, because obviously teams will be looking for that, or keen on Olave, which just so happens probably to be arguably our best receiver. So you kind of take this one out of the playbook now.
Well, I mean, honestly, that's all. I mean, first of all, I think your point's taken, Paige, well taken, and I do agree. I mean, I think that is a good question. Why waste it in that situation against that opponent? Seems like something you'd want to pocket for Penn State or Michigan, and I guess only time will tell. We'll see. Maybe he's setting up some other play off of that action down the line. I guess we'll see. Well, let's move to the elephant in the room. It's Chase Young, right? Obviously, he was not in action. There was a report. There were some comments by Herb Street that morning on game day about the situation where Herb Street had said he had heard it was a 4-game suspension and that Ohio State would appeal to get the suspension knocked down. Obviously, a lot hinges on this, although there is the question of whether Ohio State can win these next 3 games without him. Mike, I want to kick it over to you. What's your view of the situation, and how do you think this is going to shake out for Young?
Young, I'm hoping. I had heard at the end of the game, I don't know if it's been updated since, but in the fourth quarter, all they were talking about was Young. They weren't even paying attention to the game. And Klatt, what's that his name?
Joel Klatt, yeah.
Thought, and it sounded reasonable that it's probably going to get down to 2 games. Not probably. That wasn't the word he used, but he can see it coming down from 4 to 2.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I'm hoping for. I mean, I noticed his backup. I can't tell if it's because Maryland's so bad or our backups are really that good. Zach Harrison, he looked good.
Yeah.
I mean, Tyreek Smith,
Mm-hmm.
he was, but then again, it could have just been a shitty Maryland line.
Yeah, I think they've struggled. They've had like guys missing on the offensive line. They've had trouble piecing together an offensive line all season. But yeah, you're right. They did look good. So and
we'll need Young for the playoffs for sure.
Oh, without question,
So
and maybe
I
even
just
before
hope
then.
he wants to come back.
Yeah,
If he gets out 4 games, maybe he just sits out the rest of the season and just goes pro. Does it Bosa? Does it Nick Bosa? That's what I'm.
That would be
worried
disappointing.
about.
I hope it doesn't come to that. Paige, what do you think?
I think there's another shoe to drop. I think it's too clean right now. We've obviously been texting about it all day long. I don't think anybody knows anything. And it's just rumors and innuendos. We don't know who the person was. And my big thing is this guy's probably an agent or is he a booster? I don't even know what qualifies someone to become a booster.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, all that being said, I sort of the question in my mind is Ohio State still an excellent defense without Chase Young? Yeah, absolutely. I don't think they need him whatsoever to win the next 3 games, be great against Michigan, but I don't even think they need him for that game. Now to get through the playoffs,
Yes, definitely.
But the next, so even if it is 4 games, I think we'll be, we should be fine. But it's definitely a huge loss. And and the other thing, no one says this, but like, dude, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Why are you taking this money? I'm sorry, like this stuff is pounded into your heads ad nauseum, I'm sure, and you still, it's like to take your girlfriend out to the Rose Bowl. Like, I mean, seriously, like, what the fuck are you thinking? And, I think everyone's just like free chase. But I'm also like, dude, you got to be smarter than that. And so part of me is kind of like pissed off at him because of it.
I heard it was not an agent.
So you hear it's not an agent, Mike. All right. So yeah, what are your thoughts on this?
I don't think 2 games. I think it's more political. Right now, it's like, do you bring him back just for sitting out 2 games is like he's just on a little vacation. The only thing he gives up is that Heisman chance, and most people don't really think he's got a really good shot.
Yeah,
in 2 games he's just resting. But if you bring him back for 3, say he gets 3 games, then you're bringing him back for the Michigan game. That the optics don't look good on that. You're bringing him back for the biggest game in the NCAA weekend, the whole season.
Huh. So you think the NCAA will kind of bend to pressure, to public pressure, or to public perception?
It's very difficult to bring him back for the Michigan game. Have him sit out for Penn State and bring him back for Michigan. It'd be tough to do that. It wouldn't look good.
You don't think it would look good? So you're saying that they would only keep it to 2 games, or they have to go beyond 2 games because the public perception would be that he got off easy?
I'm hoping they can get away with the 2 games thing.
Okay.
But if it's not 2, it's not going to be. They're not going to split the difference into 3.
I see. All right, Mr. Sloan, wanted to get your take on this.
Yeah.
What how do you see it?
Well, the biggest thing that it comes to my mind, and of course, like Paige and what everyone's saying is a speculation, but to my mind, it's, once bitten, twice shy. We had a nasty little scandal some years ago.
Good tune, dude.
That threw out our coach and really brought down our program. So I think that them getting ahead of this and self-reporting and everything, I think they would, before they even self-reported, they probably did enough due diligence of like, what is the facts? Just tell us what it is. And before we went forward. So because the thing that happens when you report something and you're trying to hide something, those are the things that cripple you. It's not the initial thing. It's trying to get away with it.
Yep, exactly.
So I think that
Thank you.
The NCAA is the vagaries of the NCAA. We none of us know. I mean, you could go by precedent, but even that's not consistent. So my guess is that at worst it would be 4 games, and they could appeal and rightfully probably get it down to 2. I just think my gut is that it'll just be 2 games and they'll be done with. I just don't think, if there's anything deeper to it. I don't really think, unless Chase will, kept something from them. and OSU is totally ignorant of it. That this is we got all the facts out, and it will be, hopefully judged on, and then he'll be back for Penn State.
This situation reminds me of the Troy Smith situation at the end of the 2004 season. And didn't he got suspended he missed the bowl game that year, right? They beat Michigan, but he missed the bowl game, and then he had to miss, I think, at least one, or it could have been 2 games of the following season as well, but it was a similar situation. Yeah. It was a booster that gave him money. It was a small sum of money. Not exactly the same situation, but it was, he was given money. I don't think he paid it back, but I think he had like a 3-game suspension, if I'm not mistaken. I hear what Paige is saying, and I have some of the same concerns that once the NCAA starts digging, it's just this is that quiet period that makes me really nervous, because sometimes it is exactly what it is what it is on its face, and it's not a big deal, and it's a small suspension, which was kind of the Troy Smith situation, right? He served a small, handful of game suspension, but sometimes when you start digging a little deeper, other things come up, and the scope of it could be a little bigger than it's presented to be. And this quote unquote family friend, I think the NCAA has to look into it, right? They have to, and Ohio State has to report it, because these agents, they're not allowed to contact these kids themselves. They can lose their license, they can get in trouble, but certainly they have people working for them that are reaching out to these kids. So yeah, I mean, I'm with you, Paige. I kind of feel like I'm fingers crossed here, but I'm not ruling out the possibility that an investigation could reveal more,
I
more
just think
stuff.
The last thing, and then I think we should move on from the topic, it is just a wee bit suspicious that this family friend is somebody that he met after his freshman year or during his freshman year.
Yeah.
So
the timing is a little...
the timing here... trust me, and I'm pulling shit out of my ass as much as anybody else. But my point is, nobody, I think, really knows what's going on. And so, do I want it to be 2 games? Sure. I'll deal with the optics. Sure. I'm not going to be completely surprised if there's not a little bit more to this story than we've, been led to believe to this point.
All right. I was going to ask you guys. This is the most dominant I think I've ever seen an Ohio State team play this late into the season. I was trying to think of a season that compares to this, and I'm talking strictly about the regular season. I mean, the 2014 team had a dominant postseason. They went on a dominant postseason run where they kind of just transformed themselves into this completely different next level team from the regular season. They were good in the regular season, but they were next level on that postseason run. But I'm trying to think of like a season that compares to this in our lifetimes. I mean, the 96 season kind of comes to mind. I remember they started that year like with a 70 point performance against like Rice. And then the next week against like Pitt, they had a 70-point game. And I think in the first half of that season, they beat up on a top 5 Notre Dame team. And then the next week they beat up on a top 5 Penn State team. But they didn't sustain their dominance for 3 months. And of course, we all remember how they lose to Michigan in the shoe. They laid an egg in that game. They actually had a really close game at Indiana the week before that. But there were stretches of that season where they were really, really dominant, like looked like one of the best Ohio State teams in history. The 2013 season, similar as well. They had moments during that season where they had a stretch where they scored 63, 56, and 60 in consecutive blowouts of Purdue, Penn State, and Illinois. And as we all remember, they went 12-0 in the regular season that year, but they almost lost to Michigan.
Yeah,
they should have lost to Michigan. The Michigan game was a disaster.
Yeah, that was a bad one.
I mean, I'm having trouble coming up with, and I know I don't want to jinx it.
But that's where we are right now.
That's where we are right now. 9 games in. I don't remember an Ohio State team that has been this dominant for this long into a season in my lifetime. I mean, I think you have to go back to like the Woody Hayes era. It's crazy. There was another tweet from Bill Landis of The Athletic, who just went down the big, like, national statistics, the ones that the playoff committee considers, and listed where Ohio State ranks in there. Number 1 in scoring defense, number 1 in scoring offense, number 6 in offensive yards per play, number 1 in defensive yards per play, number 1 in third down offense, number 2 in third down defense, number 2 in offensive red zone TD percentage, number 2 in defensive red zone TD percentage. I mean, that's ridiculous. And I know they haven't played the same schedule as LSU, but they've still played a good
LSU's number
schedule.
1 schedule, but I think we have the second hardest schedule. I thought I just saw that.
Yeah,
Is that possible?
That may be true. I still think it's a very good schedule. And the fact that they're this dominant against what seems to be a pretty darn good schedule, and where they rank in all these really key measures. I don't know. I don't know if you guys have any historical comparison that I'm missing here.
Sure.
Does anybody? Paige, do you have any?
So we have a tougher schedule than Clemson and Alabama. But I'm sorry, guys, our schedule is not fucking hard. Look at it. The best Big Ten team we played is Indiana.
Probably.
It really is.
Yeah.
So we played Nebraska. They are horrible.
Yeah.
Michigan State. They are horrible. Northwestern. They are horrible.
Yeah.
Maryland. They are horrible.
Yeah.
I don't understand why people think we have such a hard schedule. In fact, I think Big Ten,
Cincinnati and Wisconsin are helping.
Yeah. And Indiana.
Well, so Indiana is saving our ass, and so is Cincinnati. But Cincinnati was life and death to beat like East Carolina the other day. All right, I still think this is a great team. I still think that we're going to run the table, but I'm certainly not on board that we played a very hard schedule today, and I think the Big Ten is pretty fucking awful this year.
You could be right about that.
But other than Alabama, I mean, who really has LSU played? Their SEC is full of dogs just as much as the Big Ten is.
Well,
I'm not going to dispute that fact. I'm not disputing that, but what I'm saying is the Big Ten's not very good this year, guys.
You could be right about that. You could. I mean, Penn State.
Possibly. We don't know until when the thing that hurts is, the only thing that we have to judge by is Michigan and Notre Dame. There's not more. We need more. I'm glad that I don't even know how old I'll be. 60 when they play Georgia in 2030. It's like they need more. It's hard to tell with these things because we don't play the other big conferences as much as anymore. So it's all speculation. We could be, but we got to wait till December and January to find out how good our conference really is and how good their conference is.
Paige, you might be getting ahead of that narrative a little bit. I mean, you could be. I mean, because I haven't heard a lot of national discussion yet that maybe the Big Ten was overrated or not any good. So maybe you're ahead of a lot of people on that. But yeah, you're looking at, the Badgers are 7-2, not bad. Iowa's 6-3 in the West. You've got Illinois, who's now in third place in the West. Michigan's been a disappointment. I think we can all agree on that. And then, Penn State losing to Minnesota on the road. I think maybe we would all conclude that they're not as good as we thought. And while we're on that topic, why don't we switch over to the result of the Penn State-Minnesota game? Let's see. What was the final on that one? That was, if anyone's got that, final score, 31-26 Minnesota. That was a good game that came down to the very last possession, although Minnesota really controlled that game for most of the game. Mike, what did you see out of that Minnesota-Penn State game? I know you watched a good part of that.
We switched over to it, and I don't think Penn State. I was never really impressed with them before. It was kind of a no-lose situation for us. I mean, we want them coming. It would have been nice to play them undefeated. Would have raised their profile when we beat them. But now Minnesota's undefeated. And it looks like that might be actually a decent game to end the Big Ten championship. So
yeah.
Either way, I mean, we got to play them both. And neither one of them were really all that impressive. They could be dangerous, but that's about it.
Okay. Paige, what did you see yesterday in that game? Mr. Vin?
I don't think I don't think Penn State's that good. We kind of talked about that in the pod before. I had not seen Minnesota play before, and so I didn't really have a strong opinion on them. So kudos to Minnesota for pulling that out. I'm still not a big believer, that Minnesota can go toe-to-toe with Ohio State, who's clearly the class of the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
But I just want, for the record, to know that 4 of our Big Ten opponents, if you exclude Michigan State and Indiana, have a combined 5-21 record.
I got a strength of schedule thing in front of me. Ohio State's at 5. In front of them is Michigan, Wisconsin, Auburn, and LSU is the hardest strength of schedule.
Interesting.
So we're number 5.
We're number 5. I think Cincinnati is a good, solid top 25 team. Indiana got into the top 25, the bottom half of the top 25. The AP poll, I saw that, and then Wisconsin's a middling top 25 team. They're solid teams, but yeah, they're not Alabama, they're not Auburn, they're not Florida, and LSU's played all those teams and beaten all those teams. So credit to them for that. I don't know if I agree with you that the Big Ten is dog shit. I think Ohio State's played a good, solid schedule so far. Clearly, their toughest tests are ahead of them. I think the reason they are where they are in the rankings is more eye test than strength of schedule, in my opinion. Matt, how do you see this? What do you see from your perspective on Ohio State and their schedule?
Well, I mean, I watched a half of the Minnesota Penn State game, and quite frankly, guys, I was very enjoyable watching football.
Yeah.
There wasn't like shit. There wasn't mistakes. They were making some well executed plays. They were making some great defensive stops. You see the Illinois being competitive. It's like, to me, the more parity. Obviously, no one's on the Ohio State level, but you see parity in the lower ranks that makes the conference, I think, a little stronger. I think you saw Illinois twice, well, not twice. It's like once came back and almost won, and then they've won 2 games, and then no one thought they were going to win.
Yeah.
And Minnesota doing what they're doing, and Iowa's been not bad. I think it's much more competitive than it has been since I remember. Like, I just think like, none of them are at the elite level. Like, we are both in recruiting, coaching, players, and staff, just light years ahead of everyone. And as I would say, LSU and Alabama are too, Clemson.
Yeah.
But I think if you compare the Big Ten to the ACC and to maybe even the SEC, like, our lower ranks are very competitive. Like, they won't give us a great game, but they'll be somewhat competitive. Like, if we play Minnesota, I can see us beating them by a couple touchdowns, but it won't be like 56-7. I think they'll do well. They have a good coach. They have players who know how to execute. And I think Penn State, I think the same thing. We'll beat them by 2 touchdowns, but they're going to put a fight to it. So I'm more impressed this year by what the Big Ten is doing. Again, they're not one's at the level of Ohio State, but it's been fun. Like I said, genuinely enjoyed watching the game. It wasn't like 2 teams slogging it out. There was some innovative play calling. Yeah. There's some talent on the field. What's that receiver for Penn State had almost
Hamler?
Hamler almost had 200 yards. It was just a good, like I said, a good game. So I think it's like 2 different conversations. It's Ohio State, and then how's the rest of the Big Ten stack up against each other?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I agree with you. It was a really entertaining game. And it wasn't, as you say, it wasn't just a Big Ten slog like you saw with, Iowa and Wisconsin in another one of the games yesterday. No, this game had lots of big plays, lots of offense, a reasonable amount of scoring. It wasn't, played in the mid-40s, like Bama LSU. So there was some defense, there was some resistance to a lot of this offensive talent that both teams brought into the game. I was actually impressed by Clifford, Penn State, Sean Clifford, their quarterback. He finished with 340 yards. Now, he doomed them with 3 interceptions. You just can't throw 3 interceptions in a big game like that. Yeah. And the Penn State secondary came into that game with some pretty big questions, and I think Minnesota really exploited them down the field. And I think, in 2 weeks in Columbus, that does not bode well for Penn State. With the way that Minnesota was able to really exploit their secondary down the field. I just went through some of the stats. Minnesota, their quarterback Morgan threw he was 18 of 20 for 339 yards. I mean, that is ridiculous. He had 2 incompletions in that entire game, and he threw touchdown passes of 66, 36, and 21 yards in the first half. Minnesota only scored once in the second half, but on that scoring drive, there was a 23-yard and a 38-yard pass play. So they really took advantage of the Penn State secondary. But I think Minnesota also has some really good receivers. I think that kid Johnson, he came into the shoe last year. Tyler Johnson did, and he actually played pretty well against us in last year's game. And then Bateman for Minnesota, he had a huge game. Rashad Bateman, he finished with like over 200 yards receiving. So, and I don't think Minnesota is a slouch. I think they're a solid defense. I was looking at their statistics nationally. I think they're somewhere in the 20s in most of the important defensive statistics. And Penn State went over 500 yards of total offense against them in that game. So, I agree that Penn State will probably give us a pretty good game, and Ohio State has got to be on alert in that game. They have to be ready for their skill. I think Clifford is a better quarterback than I had realized. Maybe the Penn State defense, however, isn't quite as good as we thought going into that game. It seems like there's some places where we might be able to exploit them. Any other comments on the Penn State Minnesota game? Anything else you guys saw? All right.
Yep.
Go ahead, Matt.
Said nope.
Nope. Okay, great. Well, then there was another game of probably much greater importance, which was the Bama LSU game, and that was also pretty entertaining. 46-41 LSU. And I swear to God, I mean, you could. To me, I had to do a double take looking at that score because I thought it said Oklahoma, Texas Tech at first, but no, that's LSU 46, Alabama 41. The teams combined for 1,100 yards of total offense. What is that? 87 points. I think in terms of offensive skill, you're not going to find a better display of offensive skill in any game probably that's played at least until the playoffs, maybe all year long. I mean, all the skill players on both sides were obviously NFL level talent, next level talent. My big takeaway, before I kick it around the horn to you guys, my big takeaway was as impressive as the quarterbacks were in that game. Joe Burrow, I think he's your runaway Heisman winner at this point. And Tua for Bama, who I thought was gritty, played very well, on a bum leg. As great as those offenses looked, I came away thinking, where the hell was the defense? I mean, there was no resistance whatsoever defensively, and it made me think about, okay, if we spin this forward, going up against more balanced teams, could one of these teams be had? I mean, Alabama's on the outside looking in, but LSU, as good as they've looked, they'll be number one on Tuesday, I think. But, if they run into a team with like talent who's a little more balanced, a little better defensively, I don't know, man. They didn't look so good to me defensively, and certainly Bama didn't either. Paige, what did you see in that game that stood out?
Yeah, the offensive skill players were amazing. I'm officially off the Joey Burrow bandwagon because I think as Ohio State fans, we all need to be careful what we wish for. That seems to me like a collision course, which would be great, playoff and or national championship game. But God, he's just great. He's accurate. And the defenses, I mean, there was just the secondary play was not stellar by either team. But then again, I mean, Bama probably has 3 wideouts that are going to play at the next level. So it was just a complete departure from what we're used to in the SEC. It was great seeing Burrow do that. That was awesome. I was cheering my ass off for them. But that's official. I'm done with that because I think we're going to see him very soon.
Yeah.
And it would be the irony of ironies, right, for LSU to take us down. So,
I mean, who saw this coming out of Burrow? Because he was not this guy last year. He was certainly not this quarterback at Ohio State. And he was not even this quarterback in his first year at LSU. Who saw this type of performance from Burrow? I mean, he's been otherworldly. I certainly didn't see it.
And
I love how he runs the ball.
He can beat you with his legs, too.
Yeah, those keepers were killers.
Yeah. Mike, what did you see out of that game yesterday that stood out to you?
I can't help but thinking that last bomb touchdown that forced an onside kick, and when Clemson had it wrapped up, all they needed to do was run out the clock, and they ended up getting in the end zone. It was over. Yeah. A minute and a half, and the very first play, 85. That's bad coaching on LSU part. They're lucky to escape. I mean,
yeah.
And I can't help but thinking that touchdown may have put Alabama in the playoffs now.
Or certainly it made the margin closer. So now
it looks like,
yeah, that's a good point.
Losing by 5 is how are you going to keep a team that only lost with 5 points to the runaway,
Yeah, well, especially when when a lot of the people who decide these sorts of things are already kind of conditioned to give Bama a huge benefit of the doubt anyway. Then you get that cheapy touchdown. I don't what the fuck was LSU doing in like press man coverage on that play?
It's terrible,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, that seemed to be. Yeah, I agree with you. And I think Danielson lost his mind on that play. Right? He was like, "What are they doing? That is idiotic."
Just make them go 5 plays down.
Yeah. Anything else out of that game that stood out to you?
Just what you guys saw. I'm really impressed with Burrow. I'm happy with Burrows. He's doing well. But no, I didn't see this out of. Isn't he like the third string quarterback behind Haskins when Barrett was taking a break?
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't show us any. He didn't do anything.
There was nothing. No, I mean,
there was nothing to see that.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't think anyone foresaw this. It's amazing what he's put together this last season at LSU. Mr. Sloan, why don't you tell me what you saw in that game yesterday, if you were able to catch any of the action?
Yeah, I watched some of it. It was kind of like watching an all-star game. There's a lot of fun shit going on, but
totally,
ultimately, I was not looking at either team thinking like we couldn't beat them.
Mm-hmm.
And I just saw, I didn't see the defensively. I didn't see them pressing or doing things that were trying to adapt to what the other team was doing. I saw like some safeties playing way off the ball, linebacker play almost fairly non-existent. Again, it is what it is, but it was like I said, it was like watching an all-star game. A lot of big plays, a lot of points, but not a lot of defense. And and when the time comes for championships, defense is how you win it. So it's fun to watch the SEC. Hopefully we'll get a team. We got to play a team and show them how it's done.
Well, one thing's for sure. One of my other big takeaways from this game is that should we see either one of these two teams, you have to have Chase Young. And neither of these teams has a Chase Young, by the way. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Bama lost 2 starting linebackers to season-ending injuries, either very early in the season or before the season started. And you could see that defensively, they're not in the same universe that they've been the last 6 or 7 years defensively. And I think I would say the same thing for LSU as well. I think it's a bit of a down year on the defensive side of the ball for both programs. As good as that offensive skill talent is, and I believe it truly is good, I mean exceptional, future NFL talent, what's really stood out to me was the lack of resistance by both defenses in this game. It was pretty staggering. I mean, Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, man. I mean, neither one of them has like an Akuda or a Wade. Like both those guys have been shutting down. Granted, we haven't played anyone on Alabama's level, but those guys have been showing what they can do and basically nullifying any kind of receiving core that we played against.
Yeah. Well, what's really funny is here we are. What was it? What was it? 2011 that these two teams played. It was 9-6. The game went into overtime, and LSU beat Alabama 9-6, and the two teams were rematched in the title game. And that was another game that went a very low scoring.
Oh, right.
Remember that? It's just so funny. Like here we are 8 years later, and we're getting a 46-41 score. It's amazing how much the game has changed and how much this league has changed. I think probably some of the rules changes and stuff to protect players have kind of opened up.
I think it's the teams. Both teams got elite players at quarterback, at wide receiver, and running back. Yeah. Those 2 running backs were murdered.
I
that
agree.
Little
with
guy
you.
from LSU,
Edwards.
that little butterball, impossible to tackle. Yeah. And Harris was a monster too. All 3 of them are stacked at receiver.
Yeah.
3 pro quarterbacks going.
Yeah.
And then their quarterbacks are,
Yeah. I mean, I think
in the Heisman.
I think even with a good defense, going in, playing either of these two teams, you're going to have to be prepared to score 35 or more because their offensive skill is just that good, I think. But defensively, these teams can be had. And I think Ohio State would, especially on a neutral field. I don't know. I didn't
over the middle. It looked open. They seemed to be doing whatever they wanted over the middle.
Yeah,
but they were also making obscene catches with the guy all over them.
Yeah,
so still pulling it out.
So we think LSU is probably going to be number one on Tuesday. Would you guys agree, or do we think Ohio State hangs on to number one?
No way. Yeah, LSU.
Yeah, it's going to be LSU. I think so. And I got no problem with that. That's fine. I mean, LSU has wins over Texas, who's turned out to be not very good, but Texas on the road. They beat Florida and Auburn, and now this win over Alabama. I'm not going to argue with that. I mean, I know some of those games were close. They gave up a lot of yards and points in some of those games, but they won them nonetheless. That's fine. You want to put LSU at number one? Go right ahead. I'm fine with that. I'll take just get us into the field. As far as Ohio State's concerned, just get us into the field. That's all I'm really concerned about. And get Chase Young back into the fold at some point, before the postseason starts. I think that's absolutely crucial. Paige, do you have any other comments on this game or where Ohio State might land on Tuesday in the new college football playoff rankings?
I think second. I mean, I think it's fair. LSU's, their schedule's pretty brutal. Clearly, we all know that I don't think ours is. So I'd be surprised if LSU isn't number one, and they deserve it. So.
Yeah,
but it doesn't matter. Who cares, right? Just be in the top four at the end. That's all that matters.
Yeah. Top four. Give us number 2 or number 3, and then let's set up that number one. That 1-2 matchup in that. Well, yeah. So if it's as long as we're not 4, right? Because then we would see LSU in the semis. Give us 2 or 3, and let's set up an Ohio State LSU championship game.
You got to play 2 games either way, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. An eventful weekend, even though Ohio State is kind of on a bye, basically. It was an intra-squad scrimmage for the most part. It seemed like on Saturday. It's going to be even worse than that. So Ohio State, I saw, is like a 50-point favorite against Rutgers,
God.
And I would think they'll exceed that. I mean, if the Maryland team that we just beat 60 or 73-14 beat Rutgers 48-7, oh boy, I can't imagine that.
That line actually seems low.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
It really does.
I can't imagine that being a fun
we
game
have to
to
pull
watch.
some money. Pull some money together, Paige. Let's put the bet down.
Let's call Jarrett. Call Monkey. Let's do it.
Guys, I think that was a pretty good effort for a Sunday. Any other comments before we sign off?
No, I think we're good.
Good.
Whatever happened to Austin Mack? Is he hurt?
He was hurt. Yeah, so he did not. I think he was in uniform. I thought I read that he was in uniform but didn't play. He's been a little nicked up. So that's what's going on with him. And that's just given more, opportunities to the freshman. Why am I blanking on his name? Paige, help me out. Wilson, yeah.
Garrett Wilson.
He had
83 yards yesterday.
It's good to see him in there as the full-time punt returner, by the way.
Yep.
It was.
Yeah, it was good. So, all right, fellas. Well, I think we covered it all. We'll do a preview pod, I guess, of Rutgers. if that's an exercise that's worth doing, we can look at some other games in the coming weekend. Thanks for making the time, boys. And I'll talk to you later in the week. All right, guys. Go Bucks.
All right, Zachary.